The Baltimore Ravens lose an absolute heartbreaker to the Kansas City Chiefs in week 1, 27-20. We talk about what went wrong, what went right, and a lot more coming up next year on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much, as always, for being here, making us your first listen of the day. Hey, it's 12:30. You know what? Hopefully you are the first listener today here on Locked On Ravens with us. We are free and available for you, all podcasting platforms. That includes video form on YouTube, where you are watching this live, or audio form, wherever you get your shows if you're watching this in playback form. Today's early edition of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. PrizePicks, run your game. We are 5 days a week, plus more of Locked On Ravens. That includes instant reaction game day episodes like this one. The Ravens, it was a heartbreaker. It was a thriller. It was a lot of things, but the Ravens end up falling to Kansas City again, 27-20, that final score. We have a lot more than I thought we were going to have to talk about. We have a lot to get to today. We're going to be talking about the offense, their struggles, but that final drive showed me a lot of promise outside of obviously Lamar missing a couple of wide open throws. We're going to talk about the defense, essentially keeping the Ravens in the game. Zach Orr, while there were some moments where play calling wise, it looks like he was a first-time defensive coordinator, I thought overall he held up very well against, one of the greatest quarterbacks we've seen, greatest coaches we've seen. Props to Zach Orr. Talk about the referees, those illegal formations, and just how we're feeling overall about this game, because I think there are definitely some mixed emotions throughout. So if you're here in the chat with me at 12:30 in the morning, I mean, man, I really, really do appreciate it. We've built up an awesome community over here on Locked On Ravens. So thank you for stopping in. We're gonna dive into all of your questions as well. I see Mike saying, can we talk about the refs? We absolutely will talk about the refs, as well as Lamar missing some throws. We will. And Laura, I appreciate you checking in. Longtime listener, first time caller. Let's talk about it. I think overall it was, I feel like I went through so many emotions over the course of this game, where when the Chiefs went up by 10 in the fourth quarter, you're kind of thinking, okay, we'll move it on to next week. And then they kind of just crept back in, and the Chiefs the Chiefs played. Look, I know they won the game. They didn't play that well. The Ravens didn't play well either. Both teams didn't play very well. They played well in aspects, but the Chiefs were super sloppy, much like the Ravens were. And that's how the Ravens were able to get back in this game, because the Chiefs did not take advantage of the Ravens' mistakes, and the Ravens were able to claw their way back. So on that final drive, the Ravens had a shot to win, and that's why. But let's start off with just the general box score stats, as we usually do. And with that, we will dive into some players, some specific plays from that as well. So first of all, we got to start with Lamar Jackson. And early on in the game, obviously was not great in terms of the, offensive line wasn't helping him out in any way, shape, or form. I mean, Daniel Falele saw Chris Jones run right by him. Roger Rosengarten on Rosengarten's first snap was a strip sack from Chris Jones. And Chris Jones is no easy assignment, but that's kind of stuff we've been talking about for the majority of the offseason. As they lose 60% of their starters on the offensive line, they're doing that rotation, which I was very disappointed in. I've been on record saying that I don't believe that an offensive line rotation is a Super Bowl method. We're going to see, because they clearly are committed to it. But, Rosengarten had some rookie struggles. Daniel Falele had some struggles as well. Voorhees had a couple plays. But overall, Lamar in the game, 26 of 41, 273, one touchdown, also 16 carries for 122 yards. Lamar made a very big emphasis to run the ball. And I've said this a while. I don't care how you pick up the yards. Throw for 6, run for 6. Throw for 13, run for 13. Run the ball in, throw the ball in. It counts all the same. And I almost think that with Lamar in this game, he put such an emphasis on it. He was taking open rushing lanes. He was going for check down throws as well. Justice Hill, he had 6 catches in this game. would have been the second leading receiver on the Ravens had Rashod Bateman not caught that incredible clutch time catch to put the Ravens in touchdown position. But it's those plays that, you look back on them. It's almost like September football, right? I say September wins don't matter in September, but they matter in December. Well, first quarter mistakes don't matter in the first quarter, but they matter in the fourth quarter when you're going to win the game, right? That's the thing. Or I guess in this point, and look, the Ravens I want to put this out there, the Ravens are going to win the game. John Harbaugh was going for it. You could see on the broadcast, he was going 2-2-2. It was do or die for John Harbaugh. He wanted that game. He did not want it to go to overtime. He did not want to extend it. We've seen John Harbaugh do that, and honestly, it failed most of the times he did it back a couple years ago. But John Harbaugh wanted that game. He wanted it. He 100% did. But I thought Lamar overall, he made some nice decisions. The deep ball's still not there. I think we need to see some improvement in the deep ball. Obviously, the one obviously to Isaiah Likely, which was a little bit of a deep shot, him on the run. Likely makes magic happen there. The other one to Rashod Bateman, which again, just an incredible catch from Rashod Bateman there. And then there were some other throws, obviously the two at the end of the game, right? Likely he was wide open in the end zone. Lamar overthrew him, had to jump up for that ball, and I was very scared Likely broke his collarbone I broke my collarbone very similarly to that, where I went up and you fall on it super hard, but on the replay, it looked like he avoided landing straight on it and obviously came back in the game. So very glad Isaiah Likely seems to be all right after that. But man, the other throw, Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson, I'll pull up what he said quickly here because it looked like he just didn't get the ball to Zay, right? Mike, I know you wanted to talk about those throws. Lamar ended up talking about that throw to Zay, or at least what we all thought was to Zay, but apparently that ball was not intended for Zay Flowers. Apparently, he was going for Rashod Bateman and saw Zay breaking open last minute, and he also saw Justice Hill blocking Chris Jones, so he hurried it. Those last couple of plays with Justice Hill on Chris Jones, I was kind of sweating that a little bit. Obviously, Lamar was able to make it happen, but Lamar, seemingly almost every single play, was able to step up in the pocket and it's like we saw with Mahomes. Both these quarterbacks were able to step up in the pocket and make something out of nothing, whether it be with Mahomes. Obviously he used his arm more. Lamar used his legs more, but Lamar also made throws off of that with his arm. He, again, used his dual threat ability, both with his arm and with his legs, to do stuff. But again, I still think that the deep ball situation, and I see Brad talking about it here in the chat about, it's both on Lamar and on the receivers, right? It is not all on Lamar. It is not all on the receivers. There's blame to go around, but that deep passing game has been underwhelming these past two seasons. They have to get that going. I see, the man who sold the world. I heard Ronnie got flagged for illegal formation while walking to the locker room. Would not be shocked. Kieran, I see no formation calls for KC. Let's just get into that quickly here. It's a big topic of conversation. Look, Ravens had final tally, 5 illegal formation penalties. 5 of them. Chiefs, 0. None. Apparently, it's a big emphasis, right? Apparently, it's a big emphasis for the league this year to call those formation penalties. And you saw John Harbaugh, and this is what we talk about, if you watch baseball, right? If you're in here and you're a baseball fan, it's about umpiring, right? Call it for both sides. If it's a bad strike zone, call it for both sides. In football, if there's something one team is getting away with, don't let the other team get away with it. Ronnie Stanley was getting called for these very borderline ticky-tacky illegal formations where he was, lined up too far, and then the Ravens, Rashod Bateman was lined up, and at one point, Chris Collinsworth couldn't even say anything because he didn't know what constituted it or not. And you see Jawan Taylor, Jawan Taylor for the Chiefs leaning back on every play. Like every single snap, he gets that little, he's all right. Let's do a demonstration. He's in his formation. This is my offensive line stance. It's not very good. I'm not an offensive lineman. He's in his offensive line stance, right here. Lean. Just a little lean back right before. Times it up super perfectly. So obviously on the broadcast, we can all see that. I assume the refs should be able to see it, but they didn't. So my thing with the refs is I never like to blame the refs because it's don't put yourself in the situation to have the game influenced by the refs, right? I'm not one to go and just, complain about the refs all the time and say, Ravens lose because of the refs, lose because of the refs. The refs had their imprint on this game. Again, I'm not saying it's the only reason they lost. The Ravens also couldn't take advantage of their opportunities. They had slow moments throughout this game. They abandoned the run at points, which I didn't think I'd be saying after a Chiefs game, but here we are. There were a lot of things, but the refs were a factor. Were they the reason? No. Were they a factor? Yes. That is what I'll say, because I don't like blaming losses all on the refs. I don't think that's fair to the team, and it kind of lifts up blame from players, coaches that deserve it. But the refs also, man, I mean, I haven't actually looked at the penalties. Because, look, the Chiefs did have some false start penalties. There were some things on Kansas City. The Ravens got away with one on Roquan hitting Mahomes out of bounds, and I think there was a little bit of a makeup call on that Marcus Williams one, even though, I mean, the Roquan one was much more egregious than the Marcus Williams one. I just think that was we didn't call the one, we have to call the other one type deal. But, yeah, let me pull up the team stats quickly here. Penalties, 7 for 64 for the Ravens and 6 for 45 for the Chiefs. So it was more so false starts, this, that, and the other. There were a couple pass interferences on the Chiefs. Zay Flowers still cannot be covered. But look, I'm not one to just say, oh, well, okay, the refs are the reason, let's just ignore everything else. I don't do that. But I also, when the refs make calls that impact the game and when they're not calling it both ways, John Harbaugh very visibly on the broadcast was telling the Chiefs, not telling the Chiefs, sorry, telling the refs to call it both ways for the Chiefs. There we go. Call it both ways for the Chiefs. So, again, it's tough, but there were also other reasons why Baltimore lost this game. There were plenty. So that is what it is. And Joe, actually, I've barely been able, I've been scrambling for the past 30 minutes after the game ended. I haven't actually seen what Roquan said. So let's get to our second segment and let's talk about that. I will get into what Roquan Smith said in his post-game press conference in the second segment of this show. Still have a lot to dive into on this post-game live reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Again, plenty to talk about. First, this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. So for me, I've had a ton of great experiences on LinkedIn, networking, connecting, finding jobs. It's been great. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn or looking in the wrong place on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We are back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with you, instantly reacting to the Ravens' 27-20 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. Appreciate everybody who is here with me at 12:45 in the morning Eastern time. If you're listening to this on playback, both video form or audio form, appreciate you checking this out as well. We go live after every single Ravens game, win or lose. Through all the emotions, we are here for you on Locked On Ravens. And these kind of just go as they take us, right? The regularly scheduled programming, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m., right? Those are specific topics. But, man, the chat, I love interacting with everybody who is here. And just like we talked about, Joe said that Roquan went off in his post-game press conference. So let me try to find out what Roquan said in his post-game press conference. Here we go. Roquan Smith, whoever 88 is, he better watch himself. I'll see him when I see him. So apparently Peyton Hendershot, who wasn't in uniform, pushed him from behind on the sideline. I didn't see that. I think that was probably after the Mahomes play, right? And actually Roquan kind of came and was pointing at somebody, right? So I would probably have to go back and look at that. But we'll see there. And then Roquan also ended up saying, here we go. Roquan, this is the worst we'll play all season. I promise you that. Man, the Ravens are, they're upset. Obviously, I mean, this is a game that they clearly felt they could and should have won. Mistakes, obviously, front and center, offensive line, some game plan issues as well, some calls, some miscommunications, obviously, in the back end of that secondary. So, man, it is what it is. And, man, Woodrow, I hear you. It's tough because it feels like those games where it feels over and then they kind of claw their way back and you start to get that renewed hope again, right? Get that renewed hope. And then it rips your heart out. It's almost like losing twice. So I hear Woodrow, but we're here hopefully to work and walk through that pain together, right? We are here to walk through that pain together. So hopefully this stream helps out a little bit with that. But also, we haven't talked about the run game yet. We haven't talked about Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had 5 carries on the first drive, right? Seemed like the Ravens were really going with the run game. Felt like that was what was going to end up happening, and they were going to kind of feed Derrick Henry a little bit. Well, game flow ended up having that not be the case. Henry only had 13 carries, so had 5 in the opening drive, had 7 for the rest of the game, 46 yards, did have that opening touchdown. So, hey, welcome to Baltimore, Derrick Henry. But it was really the Lamar Jackson show on the ground in terms of, well, Lamar and Derrick Henry actually split carries pretty evenly, 16-13. But the Ravens averaged 5 yards per carry. Lamar obviously was the big one of 7.6. But this is what the Ravens need to do. They need to establish the ground game. I would have liked to see them do it a little more with Derrick Henry. I thought that they abandoned the run a little too much in the middle portion of the game towards the end. And obviously, man, Justice Hill was the right guy to have on the field late. But Derrick Henry sitting on the sideline on that last drive, $16 million running back. It was a little tough to see that, even though I know situationally that was the right one. And I see Nick D here with a good point. You know, this is a good one. The Ravens, 2 timeouts. They had 2 timeouts gone in the second half with just under 6 minutes to go, or just under 5 minutes to go. Or no, it was actually 5 minutes into, 5 minutes into the third quarter, the Ravens already used 2 timeouts. And that was tough. They would have probably really liked to have those timeouts on that drive to alleviate some of that time. You know, I think they probably could have gotten 2 or 3 plays out of those timeouts, especially when you talk about the clock running down. That was tough. That was it. So, man, it's some of those situational things. And then it's just it's tough. And then I see where's the other comment? It's about, well, if I can find it. Here we go. Alex. Spagnuolo not getting called for running down to the 10 to call timeout felt rigged. Surprised people aren't talking about that. It's a huge conversation point. Apparently, something I saw was Andy Reid had called the timeout to the back judge or something, and they granted that. But what was Spagnuolo running down the field for? He can't do that. There's no punishment for it. Like, if Reid had gotten the timeout in before Spagnuolo, like, I guess okay. But then what was Spagnuolo going down to the 10 to do? Like, that is clearly not allowed. They spelled it out very clearly on the broadcast that is illegal. You cannot do that. And there was nothing. So if Reid wasn't granted a timeout, because it was acknowledged, the referee acknowledged, the referee, I think, saw that it was a person, right? Assuming it was Andy Reid, the referee saw a guy and then, okay, this is Andy Reid. So he blew the whistle and then he looked and it wasn't, and kind of like stopped. He's like, oh, like, you're not Andy Reid. And he had already blown it, so he had to call the timeout, or maybe he heard the other guy blow it. So I don't know. But yeah, like they should put in a rule, some type of penalty, like unsportsmanlike, whatever it is, because you can't do that. Like that that rarely ever happens, but when it does in situations like this, like that can't go unpenalized, because the Chiefs didn't have the right personnel into what they wanted to do. And I don't know what the Ravens did or if they didn't or whatnot, but you can't have assistant coaches running down like that unpunished. So yes, John, I think he should get fined personally. You can't do that. You can't break rules like that, especially if there's no punishment on the field for it. Yeah, you sure, delay a game. Could have been, a 5-yard penalty going the other way. I'm fine with that. So it could be. Yeah, I see RCK here saying add a penalty, take the timeout from the offending team. Yeah, I mean, again, I have not looked enough into it, but the initial, like, what we all saw was there was an assistant coach calling a timeout when there is clearly, you can't do that. You can't do that. But hey, you know what? Let's do a little bit more of a positive note. We'll get back into all that stuff, obviously. We haven't talked about Isaiah Likely yet. We're nearly 20 minutes into the stream. We got to talk about Isaiah Likely. Unbelievable game. Unbelievable Isaiah Likely game. Was a baller, was stepped up every time his name was called. Obviously, the incredible touchdown from him and Lamar, where he pulled the Lamar back. He did the back juke. The Lamar back juke. And everybody went crazy. But man, it was awesome to see Isaiah Likely do this, right? I think a lot of people expected Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely to be on the field together a lot. We didn't really see that. We saw Andrews get a lot of breathers, especially late, where he wasn't on the field. Now, I'm not saying Andrews was never on the field with Likely. It happened a decent amount. But man, likely was that security blanket for Lamar. They picked up right where they left off. And I see Kieran saying it right here. Likely is a dog. Man, he was a dog tonight. 100%. 9 for 11 and a touchdown. Averaged 12.3 yards per catch. Even if it was just a little check down on that final drive, right? I thought Lamar, up until he missed those throws, did a really good job of orchestrating that drive because the Chiefs were giving them that throw. They were giving them that throw to the outside, saying, you're not going to beat us deep. And some of the other stuff, I would have taken away the sideline, at least a little earlier, right? A little shorter on the field there. But the Chiefs were playing very soft, very off coverage. And Lamar said, all right, no one's open. I'm just gonna toss it. Just gonna toss it to Isaiah Likely, to Justice Hill. And that is exactly what he did. And that was how they ended up. It was an 87-yard drive that, again, they were just a toe off from tying this game. So it was a sloppy game. There were a lot of mistakes, super disappointing. I know all the narratives. I mean, look, you hate losing. I hate losing. I know everybody listening, I know everybody hates losing, right? There were positives to take away. There were negatives to take away. But I think the biggest thing that I end up going with here is Baltimore showed heart at the end. They could have easily given up. They could have easily said, look, this is something that, we've been stuffed all game. And there's this, we haven't been able to get a consistent rhythm on offense. And they did not fold. They did not fold. But I do agree at this point from Nick here. I do want them to get more vertical, especially in the pass game, right? Work the middle of the field a little bit more, even just getting that deep passing game going as well. So that to me is a big part of this, is as the Ravens continue. And look, the Chiefs are a hard test week one. Like, obviously the Ravens are a hard test for the Chiefs. Chiefs are a hard test for the Ravens. Both are really, really good teams. And the Ravens, was that 7-0, 7-7. Oh, is it going to be a high-scoring game? Buckle up. I said, buckle up. It's going to be a good one. And it ended up being a thriller. But it felt like, look, Ravens, fourth down, there was miscommunication, right? Nelson Aguilar didn't block on that Zay Flowers play where he crouched down. Well, Chiefs couldn't take advantage. Ravens aren't able to convert. Justin Tucker misses a big field goal, 50-plus before the half. Next play, Patrick Mahomes throws an interception. The Chiefs could not capitalize on those Ravens mistakes. The Chiefs played sloppy football much like the Ravens did. The Chiefs just made one or two plays. The Ravens had one or two mistakes, right? Xavier Worthy looked like the fastest man alive. Man, Xavier Worthy, I guess we can all thank Buffalo for that one. It's great. Thanks, Buffalo, for giving that. But, I think at the end of the day, I'm disappointed. I'm definitely upset by the loss. I think that, look, they should have won this game if they had the right stuff going. But they didn't. They didn't. There was some stuff they had to clean up, and especially with that offensive line. So Joe taking us to another break. Look at Joe, the ultimate break master here. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the offensive line a little bit, what ended up happening there, the rotation they ended up going with as well. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a lot to get to on this live instant reaction edition, late night / early morning of Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's daily #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. So, for example, one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you one win over on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win with every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. And if you want to play alongside Drewski, Joe Budden, MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley, and you can do that in the Community Plays tab under the Promos tab of the app to view entries in some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. So for this Ravens game, if you were to pick the Isaiah Likely more category, that you would have been probably great on that because Likely's number, right, kind of in the lower range, or for Lamar Jackson, more rushing yards. That one would have done great for you as well. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. We're back, our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here, almost 1 a.m. in the morning. It is late. I know my schedule is a little different than everybody else's, but, man, I'm grinding. Ravens lose 27-20. We're still talking about it here on Locked On Ravens. We'll do these instant reaction episodes after every single Ravens game. So be sure to check us out here. We are your post-game Ravens destination. Appreciate everybody for tuning in and giving me your support here on the show. We also have 5 days a week Ravens content. We'll be back here again, 6 a.m. Eastern time later today, right? 6 a.m., just about 5 hours from now. We'll be talking about some of the Ravens' concerns moving forward with this team, some of the other positives as well. We'll also have game day episodes on Sunday. Those will come out at 6 a.m. Obviously, there wasn't one today, like a bonus episode, because we do Thursday episodes anyway. So we'll do those on Sundays. But if you are an everydayer, really appreciate you tuning in every single day. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you stay a while. Really appreciate you checking in here. And if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Now, Joe said about the offensive line, right? A lot of offensive line situations. It was rough. I think we saw some positives, but for the most part, it was rough. Roger Rosengarten gets beat on his first NFL snap for a strip sack. Daniel Falele gets beat on a couple plays by Chris Jones. And look, it's Chris Jones, right? There aren't many better than Chris Jones in the league at his position. But it's some of that stuff we had talked about, man, it's difficult because this offensive line had basically no continuity in the preseason because they were trying a bunch of different guys at a bunch of different positions. Tyler Linderbaum was also absent for most of training camp. It reminded me, again, I've said this a bunch for you, and every day you listen to me every day on Locked On Ravens, you've heard this before. Reminds me of 2022 when Kevin Zeitler was out for training camp with an injury. Bradley Bozeman missed time. Ronnie Stanley was still recovering. They were flip-flopping guys in and out of the lineup, and it took him a while to get going, right? Alejandro Villanueva goes from the right side to the left side, then right side. He was going all over the place. It's tough to do that, especially against Chiefs defensive line that is really tough to deal with. And I think what the Ravens ended up trying to do was, again, they were filtering those defensive linemen up the field, right? So Lamar Jackson can step up in the pocket. You don't want them to get the edge, get around, get inside. Lamar can obviously bounce that out, but what they were doing was they were forcing those defensive linemen and those edge rushers up the field, as you should, and that was giving Lamar the ability to step up, take a one cut, and take it the other way. That's why he was able to run so effectively in this game. But man, that offensive line rotation just, it's not something I'm a fan of. I've been vocal about it. I don't think you can win a Super Bowl that way. I think you need to have a 5. You need to stick to it. I mean, it's not any one player thing, but man, I mean, just go with Falele and McCary if that's what you're going with. Put Cleveland in there. I mean, look, I see Dylan say, wouldn't Cleveland be better than Falele? I would personally, I said before the season started, I think that the floors of Ben Cleveland and Patrick McCary are higher, and I would take those floors over the ceilings of Roger Rosengarten and Daniel Falele right now. You know, as we get later on into the season, okay, right? Okay, you can kind of work with that, see what guys are doing. Is there an injury situation? And I get the reasoning for it. I'm sure the Ravens have some durability concerns with Patrick McCary. I don't know if later in the season they're going to do it with Ronnie Stanley as well, or they're just going to hope he has a full season here. But I don't like the idea of an offensive line rotation. I don't. So that's where I'm at with that. I thought that the offensive line is going to be a concern for the entire season. I think that they will be okay by the end of the year. And we won't be talking about them as the biggest issue, but they're not going to be great, right? They're not going to be this top 5 unit. I expect far from that. And it's probably not realistic to expect them to be something like that. But I just think with continuity, it'll look better. I think with time, it'll look better. But how good is better? Right? How good is better? And I agree here. Jeff's saying who was on the line for the final drive. I think that they had McCary in there and Falele. I don't think Rosengarten was in on that drive. They looked good. And again, as the game went on, got things going, you know, look better. And that's what I'm saying, where it will look better with time. I still don't think it's going to be like the best thing ever. I don't think anybody should expect that, but I think it will look better. But there were certainly plays in this game that the offensive line gave up that contributed to the loss tonight. And yeah, look, Rosengarten, he will be good. Again, it's almost like the Emory Jones thing we talked about a couple weeks ago, where first play, just gets absolutely, the offensive lineman gets torched, and it was just a rough first play. Rough first play for Roger Rosengarten. Rough first play. But just with time, it can be it. And yes, Eric DeCosta and Nick, 100%. He did warn us about the line. There were some concerns there. He expressed those concerns. And yeah, it's just it's tough. And Brandon, I hear you with the John Harbaugh stuff here about the run game with Derrick Henry and them not running it. I would have hoped they would have run it more with Derrick Henry. I thought that they did mismanage that a little bit. And it was definitely a missed opportunity for them to establish, especially after the first drive, right? And Henry ended up getting stuffed on a lot of different plays. And, his long of the night was, what was his long? His long was 9. So it wasn't like he was breaking off these big, long runs. But you have to stick with it. The Ravens, it was actually a decently balanced game. 41 passes compared to 32 rushes overall for the Ravens. So it wasn't like they completely abandoned it. But again, I don't think you gave Derrick Henry $16 million to run the ball 13 times a game. And obviously game flow is real. Game flow is what happened here. And if the Ravens are up and ahead, Derrick Henry probably gets 20 plus, 25 plus carries in the game. But we also haven't talked about the defense a lot. And Brian talking about the secondary. Couple of huge miscommunications in that secondary. The one obviously being on that Xavier Worthy touchdown. He was wide open. And Marlon Humphrey passed off Worthy because he thought he had safety help over the top. There obviously wasn't, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, I don't want to just accidentally throw somebody under the bus, but I think it was Eddie Jackson who that miscommunication was with. I'm not sure, though, so don't quote me on it. I just, first glance, I thought it was Eddie Jackson. But, yeah, it was secondary had some tough moments overall. Wasn't the worst thing in the world. Like, I wouldn't go necessarily as far as you to say they lost the game, but they were a contributing factor, and the mistakes were loud, right? The mistakes were loud from the secondary tonight. So I thought they had some good moments. Obviously, Marcus Williams knocking the ball off from Juju Smith-Schuster. And again, that's what I'm talking about. The Chiefs, let me get these stats quickly here. Chiefs went, 1 for 3 in the red zone? Yep, 1 for 3 in the red zone. Baltimore went 1 for 4, but the Chiefs could have put this game away, and they didn't. And they allowed the Ravens to creep up over it. And I also see this. We saw a lot of Jalen Armour-Davis in this game. Well, maybe not a lot, but a decent amount. We didn't see a ton of Nate Wiggins in this game. It felt like I'll have to see when the snap counts come out tomorrow. I believe those will come out. So, yeah, it'll be tough. And I was thinking about this a little bit here, narrative, where in like the middle of the third quarter when the Ravens, look, Derrick Henry, again, 5 carries on that first drive, had 8 at halftime. So 3 carries at halftime after that first drive. It wasn't obviously exactly like the championship game because the Ravens only had, Lamar had 12 rushes in that game. Running backs had 6. So they still ran the ball more than that, but I wasn't sitting here expecting to say, man, wish the Ravens would have used Derrick Henry more. Like, I thought we were kind of past that. But look, I agree with this from Ball here. Lamar had a couple of missed throws, right? We can all acknowledge that. He was not perfect in this game. Deep ball needs to be better. Missed a couple of really big throws that would have tied the game. But overall, I thought he was making very smart decisions for the most part. He was careful with the ball, sliding down with his body, right? He was in position to take a couple of really big hits, was being safe with his body. Again, him being slimmed down, looking a little bit, looking athletic out there, right? Looking good and is feeling good. He was in position to take a couple big hits. He was able to get down on the ground. I liked that. But again, he was making good decisions with the football for the most part. Was not a perfect game from Lamar. I'm not going to call it that. Nobody should. But I thought that him taking checkdowns, taking safe throws, right, running when there were rushing lanes, I thought that it was really good. So I thought that it was really good. Actually, this goes hand in hand. Clay, on a positive note, aside from likely who shocked you the most with how good they played, I'm going to go with bare arms here. Trenton Simpson. Trenton Simpson looked really good to me. I was very impressed with Trenton Simpson in this game. Obviously, the Ravens were getting destroyed. Oh, man. They were getting destroyed over and over and over and over again. That Rashee Rice in the slot on Roquan Smith, on Malik Harrison, on those linebackers. Rashee Rice was torching, absolutely torching this defense. But you know what? Guess what? Trenton Simpson was the only one who was able to stop that. The only one. I thought he played with a lot of composure in the game. Really good debut for Trenton Simpson. So that's a guy that I was really impressed with. Offensively, I thought, well, obviously outside of, the question is outside of Isaiah Likely. I thought that Justice Hill did his part as a receiver, was pretty lethal out of the backfield. And they're going to use him in that role a lot, especially until Keaton Mitchell comes back. And even then, right, could be really, really good. So I think that is one of the big things for me is I thought Justice Hill and the role he had to play looked really, really good. Also, yeah, RKT Adafe Owe did have, or RCT, excuse me, Adafe Owe did have a pretty good game as well. So yeah, I'm not necessarily, look, it's a tough loss. You obviously hope to win these types of games. You know, it's a close game. It's a tough 0-1 start against a really good Chiefs team. But you got to move on. You know, hopefully these two teams meet again in the playoffs. Would not be shocked if this was a AFC Championship game rematch. But if they lose this game, you know, season's not over. Right? Season's not over. Shante asking what's going on with Justin Tucker. Why is he missing over 50 yards? It's tough. I mean, again, Justin Tucker's not a 28-year-old anymore, right? He's also not 50. Let's not slow our roll. But sometimes it's just like that, right? Justin Tucker, you know, he's a guy that we've expected perfection from forever because that's all he's given us. It's all he's given us is perfection. It's why, you know, for this team, the Ravens have all they've known from Justin Tucker is pretty much perfection. And so from 50 plus, he was 1 for 5 last year and missed the one tonight. So I don't have like a tactical answer for you, Shante, but I feel like at this point, you know, we have to give Justin Tucker some leeway. He's given us so much perfection. And Rick, this is exactly it. It's not automatic. It usually is with Justin Tucker, right? But it's not. Automat Tuck is what we've been familiar with calling him over these years. But, you know, it's tough for a kicker to have that excellent perfection. It always comes to a heat at points. And look, I don't expect this to be the new norm for Justin Tucker. I expect him to bounce back from that. But man, at the end of the day, it is tough to kind of see, you know, him go through that struggle and through that stretch. So, man, tough loss. That's all I have for you here today. I saw, look, RCK, this means a lot. First time catching a live reaction. Had a great time despite the loss. Man, I appreciate that. We go live after every single Ravens game, so you can tune in after every single one of these Ravens wins, losses, hopefully no ties. I despise ties, but hopefully the Ravens can bounce back. We'll be back here 6 a.m. later today, under 5 hours. We'll be recording another show, and we'll be talking about some of the Ravens' concerns, them, and also where the Ravens go from here. We'll, again, break down the Chiefs game more as well. But really exciting that football is back despite the loss, right? We've all been waiting for this moment. And one more, Clay asking what the fish is named. So I also do work over at the Ryan Ripken Show. So we have 2 fish in there. One is Ryan Ripfin. We voted on this in the chat on the Ryan Ripken Show, and Kevin and Zach react. Ryan Ripfin is one of the fish's names. The other one is Birch Fish, because we cover the Orioles over there, and Birch Smith is a reliever. So the fish were the chat names for the Ryan Ripken Show over there. So we got 2 guys in there, and just swimming around. You see them in the back there. So really appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll be back here again just under 5 hours, so be sure to stay tuned for that. I'm going to see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.